Good evening once again, and as we mentioned, we're going to be tracking, inroads that have been made to address gender-based violence. And my guest tonight is none other than retired Lady Justice Dr. Nancy Baraza, who is the chairperson of the Technical Working Group on Gender-Based Violence, including Femicide. Thank you, ma'am, for your time.
You're welcome.
You are already probing the gender-based violence. Looking at the statistics, they're quite alarming. 47 women killed weekly in Kenya, and a report there indicates that 725 cases actually of femicide alone were reported in 2024. True. As you're tracking this and trying to find out why the increase in number, what are you finding?
As you have mentioned, we are finding a horrifying story of women being killed almost every day, but as I've said, a minimum of 47 women are losing their lives every month. So we are finding those alarming figures, but according to our terms of reference, we were to look into possible causes of increased GBV, including femicide, and make recommendations, policy recommendations that could form a basis of action on behalf of the President and the Executive. So that is what we are finding. And of course, what is most alarming is that femicide is happening within domestic setups. In places, in homes where people should find love, should find comfort, but those have become the death traps for women. So out of all these figures, 60% of women killed have been killed by intimate partners, mostly husbands, and also boyfriends, or within home setups. So that is what is most alarming. Then we find 5% is by people who are strangers. And another 35%, the causes and the perpetrators are not known. Are not known. But the scary thing is that domestic area.
Domestic is no longer safe. Home is no longer safe.
Home is not safe.
Why do you think
it's the most dangerous place for women?
What has changed? Because from an African setup, home should be your home. It should be a place of peace. What has changed?
What has changed? I don't know if anything has changed, because those of us who have been in this struggle for women's rights and targeting GBV from our days in FIDA, if you ever heard of FIDA.
Yes.
Domestic violence has always been there. Yes. Home has always been dangerous for women.
Yes.
But there is an increase, and the outcome of the COVID pandemic showed that that is a very, very dangerous place for women and for children. There are a lot of defilements going on within that home setup, so that a child is not safe with their father, or with their brothers, or with their uncles. The wives are not safe. Some men are not safe. Domestic violence. But of course, it affects women most. So the home is a problematic place because it is a place considered to be private. It's private space, and therefore the state hardly intervenes. And then it is protected by culture. It is protected by secrecy. People are being killed, people are being battered within there, but everybody considers it to be a private space.
Private space.
Private space, so that nobody reports.
Now let's go, you've mentioned something about the reporting, because statistic indicates that conviction rates are at dismal 12%. Of the cases that actually get reported. But even before we get reported, there's also the subversion of justice, and I'm using it with a tinge of salt. We are having people opting for kangaroo courts when it comes to addressing this issue, because it happens within the home. How is this affecting justice, especially from the victim or the survivor point of view?
When people can't report, that compromises justice for the victims. When the victims themselves cannot exercise the agency to get out there and report because of culture, because of stigma, fear of stigma, that compromises justice for those victims. And then the few which get reported and get prosecuted, again with challenges within the justice sector. Then we have very few which get concluded successfully. But more often than not, because of its very nature, because of the intimacy of the people involved, most victims sometimes withdraw those cases, opting to go for mediation, for other forms of resolving the dispute. And therefore they withdraw. Yeah. Even when the police have worked hard to bring people to book, even when the prosecution is working hard to make sure that the cases are prosecuted, then the victims are forced by one thing or the other to withdraw. And that, in my view, is what is compromising these cases and making the perpetrators more encouraged to continue perpetrating the violence. And when you look at cases of femicide, they are as a result of a pattern of abuse, consistent abuse within that home. Then it is resolved, or so it is thought it has been resolved, and then it continues because there is no sentence or there's no punishment which can deter. Then eventually this pattern results into femicide. So that is what is happening.
Right. Now, especially where children are concerned, when you talk about gender-based violence, there's the issue of culture and tradition, and this is where early marriages come in.
Yes.
Are we also addressing early marriages as a form of gender-based violence?
Of course it is. Early marriages are a form of GBV. A child or someone below the age of 18 is a child. Yes. And when such a child is married off, she's definitely being defiled. And that is GBV. She's going through that process of how women or wives are generally treated, you know, beaten and mistreated, and therefore that is GBV. GBV. So there is law, of course, which the marriage law, the constitution itself, which prohibits early marriages. Yeah. But they are still going on in certain pockets. Yeah.
So then, how then do we strike a balance, you know, when it comes to culture and tradition, that we continue, we say Africa is our business, you know, we are traditional, but then some are crimes. How do we strike a balance? How do we still...
I think we need to strike that balance. The Constitution is so clear. Yes. It recognizes positive culture. There is positive culture in our African setup, but there is negative culture. Things like FGM, early marriages, wife beating, those ones are discouraged by the law. And therefore, we need to harmonize, have the law be real, result in positive gains for women and girls. Right. So culture, unless it is positive and contributes to the well-being of citizens, that is not culture that should be obeyed. And I'm talking about this private space.
Yes.
This so-called private space, which the state cannot intervene, which the citizens cannot intervene. And yet that is the epicenter of femicide.
We will be picking up from that point, Dr. So tonight we're tracking inroads that are being made to stem the rising cases of gender-based violence, including femicide. And my guest is none other than retired Lady Justice, Dr. Nancy Baraza, who is the chair of the Technical Working Group, saying that the home is not home where you find peace, but the epicenter of this particular scourge. We'll be back with more, a quick breather. Welcome back. You can be part of this conversation. Get us on X at KBC Channel 1. My guest tonight is none other than retired Lady Justice Dr. Nancy Baraza. She chairs a technical working group on gender-based violence as well as femicide. Dr. Ari, before we took a quick break, we were looking at the statistics and how the home is no longer safe. But then what do we do, especially when culture, you've mentioned culture, sometimes we need to take up the positive culture and do away with the negative. But then on ground, that not enough. We're also looking at the issue of men. The men are also victims in this gender-based violence debacle. Where are they? What are the statistics? What findings have you had in this probe?
Men are also victims of domestic violence. Although, as I started off by saying, it affects women most. Okay. But there are some. But the problem with the men suffering from domestic violence or gender-based violence is that they don't report. Oh. Men hardly go to the police station to report because they are ridiculed, they are laughed at, they are bullied by fellow men who think he's betraying the male gender.
A man cannot be beaten up.
A man cannot be beaten up, and how can you get it?
Yes.
So they don't benefit from the protections of the law.
All right.
Okay, so that is a problem. Again, a practice or an attitude that we must debunk if we are to deal with GBV.
It cuts across all genders.
It cuts across all genders.
Dr.
So that if a man goes to the police station, they will just say, please go back home. I mean, you can't. So.
But then that is a reality, not just for men, but also for women who find themselves reporting these matters. We've had reports where a victim goes to report, but they're asked, how do you know this person? And immediately they say it's a spouse, a partner, a boyfriend, a girlfriend. It becomes a domestic squabble. What do we do in such a case? What would you advise a victim who is seeking justice in such a situation?
I think the people we are trying to deal with, and we've been in touch with the Inspector General of Police to pass message to the public and to his officers around the country that gender-based violence is a serious crime. It is a serious violation of the rights of women and men and children, and therefore it should be treated seriously when victims go to report. And that message should go across the country. Because when we dismiss it as a domestic thing, then we are letting these fellows go back from the space where they are trying to run away from, and eventually they get killed. Yes, so I urge the Commissioner of Police, and we are in contact with that office just to pass that message across, that police officers manning stations where GBV is being reported should take that work very, very seriously. Okay.
Some of the comments and feedback that we're getting on our socials include a question of coercion. A question of coercion, especially when someone reports and they're forced by the family members to recant their statements. What is how do you seek redress, or how do we avoid that from happening or stop from happening? Because it is happening.
That is what is now causing these numbers, escalated numbers of GBV, because of that interference and family members discouraging people from reporting, coercing them, threatening them, sisters-in-law threatening wives who have been beaten. And yet there is so much violation going on within that. They can't even report sodomy of their own children. They can't. They cannot report incest of their own children. And it is going on. They are just shrouded in secrecy. As human rights of these children, the lives of these children, the dreams of these children are being broken. And let me tell you what we are finding is those horror stories of fathers impregnating daughters. Incest is on the rise. Sodomy is on the rise within that family setup.
Now, the question is, how safe are these victims once they report? Because there's been a question of exposure. How are we handling their safety?
Ideally, in a good functional system, there should be safe houses or shelters, even within police stations, where these people can seek refuge. They can be housed, they can be protected. Because let me tell you, I assure you, if most of them, if they go back, the backlash is really big.
Yeah.
So in an ideal situation, there should be shelters or safe houses where these victims can go. And so most of them don't go to report because, exactly because of that reason, that where will they go? And they will be beaten up. And the whole community will turn against them. Yeah. So in an ideal situation,
we should have safe houses.
We should have safe houses.
But then we do not have these safe houses. So what to do?
Those are the things we are looking into. We are looking into them. I have studied a lot around this area. I have looked at comparative jurisdictions. What have they done? And for it to be meaningful combating of GBV, then we must have those safe houses if we are serious about it. And therefore, this calls for a reorganization of our financing, prioritizing. Are we putting sufficient resources within the GBV, combating GBV?
Yes.
Because if we don't have those safe houses, where will those children go who have been sodomized, who have been defiled, who have been raped, and they keep going back there
to the same space. Now,
yeah.
As we bring this to a close, I know this is a conversation that we can take a long time discussing, and we'll be looking out for the report of this particular task force and the recommendations therein. We are in the technology age, and we have seen a rise in cyber gender-based violence. Sextortion is on the high. Actually, there's been a 40% increase. I mean, do you have the capacity to get ahead of this?
That is one of our terms of reference, to look at the effect of social media, issues of cyberbullying, issues of social media pushing toxic masculinity. And let me tell you, from what we are getting, that is one of the reasons that we have GBV and femicide on the rise, because of that toxic masculinity being propagated by the online. So that is an issue. It is an emerging area, and probably we may not have sufficient laws that govern that area within the context of femicide and GBV. And that is an area that we are mandated to look into. Yeah.
In conclusion, Dr. Ari, because we'll have this conversation once again as the task force continues to do its probe and such. In closing, safety of women, especially, the rise of femicide, and also just generally looking at gender-based violence, what advice would you give as in closing?
From what I have seen so far, the family which is supposed to be the glue of society is disintegrating. The family is broken in Kenya. Children are on their own, shaping their own culture. Now, these young boys, 19-year-old, killing in the most callous manner, and you look at them, they are disconnected from family. They are on their own. And then I think just lack of respect for women, it's gone. And I think they get it from home, from where. How you treat women or people generally, we pick it from somewhere.
Yes.
And these children can only be picking it from home. If the fathers and mothers are busy fighting, what are these children getting out of it? They are the monsters of tomorrow.
Yes.
And that is what is happening.
Oh, that is quite heavy. They are the monsters of tomorrow.
They are the monsters of tomorrow. What else are they learning from there? They know the father is sodomizing their brothers. They know the father is beating their mother. They know a relative is defiling their sister. What can those children grow up to be? They can only be the demons that we are manufacturing for tomorrow. So family, I think parents, family in Kenya is broken. And unless we mend it and we get serious about our children and teach them the values that used to glue the society together, we are losing it.
Those are the words of retired Lady Justice Dr. Nancy Baraza, who chairs that technical working group that is probing gender-based violence as well as femicide. The family setup is disintegrating, and that's creating future monsters. That is our interactive segment. Remember, we're going to be having this conversation as the task force continues with its probe, so we'll be keeping tabs on that. Thank you very much, ma'am, for your time.
You're welcome.
Now let's bring you up to speed with more stories where